morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tex Messages. On the parasite of the show, my name is Rick Tex, or Richard Tex, but preferably Rick Tex. That's usually what most people who've identified me on the streets would refer to me as. So we're gonna have a jam-packed show today. On this Tuesday morning in central Minnesota, we had blizzard conditions the other night, so we're kind of just on lockdown now, and I figured this would be a great opportunity to debut this particular show here. Not only are we going to have text messages, this current show, we're also going to have some shows in the future as well. One of the shows being Good Times Balls Deep. We haven't yet worked out the details of Good Times Balls Deep, but currently the preliminary estimates are a particular gentleman will run through current events, provide his input of the current events, give you a deep dive into it and a better perspective of matters, and just provide great insight for the ladies and gentlemen and you viewing audience at home. So we're definitely excited. We're definitely excited to bring you that show. We might have some other shows in the future too, but for now we'll just stick with the big two now: Text Messages and Good Times Balls Deep. But Good Times Balls Deep will definitely. This show will more or less be filler for Good Times Balls Deep, because the talent that we have lined up for that show are just our next level, top notch, and you guys, ladies and gentlemen at home, you definitely won't be disappointed. All right, now moving on to what we need to discuss today. Here in Minnesota we have 4 seasons of the year: spring, fall, winter, summer. And we're transitioning from winter to summer, which more or less means that you're going to have a lot of opportunities to work outside, work out in the garden, bike around, walk around, maybe get on a hot air balloon and fly around, or do a helicopter ride. Just drive around and enjoy yourself, enjoy the nice weather. So one thing that we definitely like to enjoy doing is gardening. I wanted to just touch base. Actually, I want to dedicate a large majority of the show to gardening, because gardening is very important. Not only does it provide you with the energy that you are required to survive and thrive in this world, and also be a good, upstanding, morally sound citizen, and to be a good neighbor too. There's nothing more attractive to the neighborhood than when you provide a very aesthetically pleasing garden, and when you have life and enzymes, and that soil, in a square inch of soil, there's billions of life forms. And if you can foster those life forms and cultivate them to do what you'd like them to do, to work together symbiotically with those organisms, you will attain a garden that you'll love. Not only that you'll love, maybe your animals will love. Maybe you got like a goat or chicken or sheep or cattle or a pet rhinoceros or something like that. I mean, all those animals can enjoy good nutrition if you grow it yourself. If you work together as one with the soil will work with you as long as you work with it. That doesn't necessarily mean just dump as much synthetic fertilizer and pesticides on it and just try to carpet bomb everything and kill everything and then introduce some random plant and then hope it grows, because unfortunately that may work short term, but long term, eventually the soil is just going to turn into sand. It'll look like garbage, and you're not going to be able to grow a whole lot there. So ultimately, working as one with the soil is the primary objective. Now, this is about the time of the year. We're in early March right now. So if you wanted to start your little seedlings, you can plant them indoors. Use those little round containers with like cardboard all over them, or those plastic containers, but they look like a bunch of little squares. Just pluck a few seeds in there, stick them in front of a south-facing window, feed them rain, water, sleet, hail, and then ideally, hopefully they grow like a weed. But you definitely have to pay close attention to them too. So too much water, you might get fungus and mold and all that other goofy stuff. And too little water, they don't have any nutrition, they're gonna die too. And the source of water is also very helpful too. Generally speaking, if you collect rainwater or just pull some snow from outside, thaw it out, dump it in there, that type of water is going to contain many more nutrients than your well water. Because once your water, or your city water, City water just has a bunch of chemicals to dumb down the population anyway, so it would serve a reason that would probably just dumb down plants as well. Well water, the water that gets to the well has already been through the soil, hundreds of feet of soil. So the soil has already extracted the nutrients that it would like out of the water. And sure that there is some filtering too. Every bacteria feeds off of different objects or chemicals, and some bacteria even feed off of feces. So they do filter out a lot of the dangerous chemicals. That's not to say that well water is automatically poison-free or toxin-free or venom-free. You know, maybe someone threw a dead snake in your well or something, and the venom permeated throughout the well. So then if you drink it, you're just going to instantly have your blood turn into gel and then just die a painful death. So it is a good idea to get your well water tested. You can pretty much go to Menards or just go to Menards. And then there's test kits there. Another secret too, if you go to the hot tub section or the swimming pool section, they have the same type of water testing strips as for the drinking water, except you get about 50 times as many for pretty much the same price. So in other words, you're basically better off going to the hot tub section to attain your water testing items. And there are some local businesses and municipalities that will test your water, but they charge a lot of money, and they just test for certain things too, like nitrates and harmful bacteria, maybe fecal matter, maybe someone dropped in your well or something like that, or the septic is leaking. So I suppose that is an option too, if you take comfort and solace in having somebody that knows what the hell they're doing test your water. Me personally, I'll just buy the test kit, do what it says on the instructions, and hope for the best. The tests there is some variation in the testing. I mean, you're not guaranteed to get 100% accuracy every single time you test the water. You might test for bacteria, then you gotta mix it up and put it in this little container, shake it around, and then wait for 2 days. And if it turns yellow, you got some problems. If it stays purple, you're good to go. Now, that testing does take an elongated period of time, and of course, there's always deviations in your sample size. Because you're just getting a really little tiny sample, may or may not have bacteria in it, but that doesn't necessarily prove that there isn't harmful bacteria in your well water too. Mostly, back in the day when I had an option of spending $70 to test my water for harmful bacteria, or just to get the UV system on my RO, figured, all right, well, either I can spend $70, test the water, see that it's clean, not get the UV system, or spend $70, find that the water is dirty, then I have to get the UV system anyways. Or I can just get the UV system, get the 6-stage RO kit or whatever it's called, and then plug it in and start drinking water and feeling great again. And of course, if you want to make America great again, you have to feel great again. So ultimately, it wasn't so much a decision of economics, it was just, that was before I knew about the Menards test kits too. I thought that water was some intricate rocket science type deal. I didn't know that you could just dip a strip in water and then it tells you what the pH level is and the chlorine levels and the hardness testing and all that stuff too. It's one of those live and learn type deals. So the water that you use for your plants, just get rainwater or snow, which is pretty much rainwater. I guess it'd be snow water. Well, currently it'd be snow solid. And then when you bring it inside, then it turns to rainwater. Because that's going to have all of the nutrients from the air the clouds designed so that the soil can eat the nutrients or whatever. And then you dump that in your plant, the plants grow, you're happy, the plants are happy, your animals are happy, the enzymes in the soil are happy, your community's happy, America's happy. It's just a 360 win all around. Now, probably about May is when you know that there will be no more overnight frosts. Because if you plant anything and it starts to grow like a weed and then you get a frost and it destroys the leaves, kills the leaves, then plant is pretty much going to give up after that, for the season at least. If it's biennial or whatever those plants are called that grow year after year, like strawberries and blueberries and raspberries and chokeberries. Then it'll come back the next year, but it'll just be done for the season. Or your apple trees, for example, like if they're buds on the flowers and then this frost comes and knocks them all out, they're done for the year. No, the leaves will still absorb the solar power and bring all the water, and it'll bring all the nutrients into the root system, and the roots will grow a little bit bigger, but you won't have any apples. Generally, the first couple of years when you do have apple, fruit, pear, cherry trees, you usually do pluck the fruit off just so that it can create that elaborate root system. That way when you actually, instead of just growing these worthless little apples that are completely worthless and not edible, they're super sour, you can't get any type of meat out of them. Instead of growing a bunch of them, wasting the plant's energy for that, it just grows a bigger root system. Maybe grows some more branches. That's another thing too, it's important to prune the fruit trees so that they can grow in balance. So you got a branch here, a branch in one direction, branch going north and south, branch going east and west for the radio listeners at home or at the park or on a walk or in their car or on their bike, wherever you may be. Now, getting back to the planting, for example, the plants that you usually want to put into the ground year after year, broccoli, cauliflower, eggplant, avocado squash, tomatoes, radishes, things of that nature. You generally plant them around May or like mid-May, or then the frost has passed and you're not going to have to deal with that. So that you can just stick them in there, start watering them. Maybe hook up some cool irrigation system that's hooked up to your rainwater. That's another thing too. If you get to about mid to late summer, in Minnesota at least, the rain it doesn't occur as often. So usually what I've done in the past is I'll collect rainwater. I'll just put I'll put like 1 or 2 barrels somewhere and just collect, the 250 gallons of rainwater, and then just put it aside. Maybe in a cool location so it doesn't grow a bunch of weird bacteria if you leave it in 200 or 100 degree closed quarter area with the greenhouse effect or in a garage or something. So then when late summer comes around and it's not raining as often, so maybe it only rains once or twice a month. I mean, maybe not quite that arid, but the frequency of it definitely is diminished from April, May, and even June. So it's good to be prepared for that late summer time of the year. That way when your plant is starving and when your plant is at its biggest, so when your plant is at its biggest, it needs more water. And then if it's not raining out, it's going to make a challenge to provide it with more water. So you have to be vigilant and cognizant of that too, and just to be ready. One of the most important things about planting though is to know what plants work with your soil, and you'll find that out through experience too. You may grow broccoli, cauliflower, avocado squash, maybe a turnip, radishes. You might find that 2 of the plants grew pretty damn good, but the other 2 didn't grow worth a crap. So then in future years, you can also do soil tests as well. Fleet Farm, they got those little containers. You test it for phosphates, nitrates, the sodium chloride, and all that other stuff too. You can absolutely test your soil for that. And then when you buy the plants, they'll say, this plant needs these nutrients, or buy this type of organic plant food, or use horse manure or cow manure. Horse manure definitely works pretty good. You can usually find somebody that wants to part with their horse manure, and they're more than happy to give it to an honest, hardworking, upstanding member of society too. I mean, you might have to pay for it, but more than likely they'll probably just go on Craigslist and look for even dirt. You can also find some pretty good black dirt for free. a lot of people that live in their little coffin apartments in downtown Minneapolis or something, they don't have a lot of room. So if they dig up a little garden and they have a bunch of dirt and they don't have anywhere to put it, then, or if they dig up a swimming pool, then they'll have to get rid of the dirt somehow. So then they'll just give it to somebody for free. As long as you got a pickup or maybe you got an older pickup like a 1963 Ford F700, which would be outstanding for hauling dirt. Definitely couldn't recommend anything much better than that. You can also go to retail stores and buy the actual black dirt. It's really good stuff. The blacker the better, then you know that there's more living enzymes within it. When you get the sandy, look at gravel. Gravel is just the super light color. It's not dark. There's no life forms in it. It's just dead material. You can't really plant anything in that. There are occasionally weeds that'll grow in gravel, but that's mostly because there's absolutely no competition as far as other growing plants. And whatever nutrients they extract out of the gravel, I don't really know. That's why they're called weeds, because nobody really cares too much about them. You do have a natural soil too, and it's based on many factors. The water table level, for example, how much, if it rains, if you got clay, the clay will hold the water for a while, and it might grow a bunch of weird mold and fungus and everything too, or it might grow really super good stuff. It's hard to say. You got a bunch of sand as soil too, the water is just going to seep right through that, and then it won't hold, it won't hold and it won't grab many of the nutrients. So based on your soil, try to like if you got a bunch of clay, then maybe you try to add more sandy soil to try to rectify the issue of the clay. Or if you got a bunch of sandy soil, add a bunch of clay. But in all circumstances, black dirt is always the best case scenario. That's what you're always yearning for as far as being a successful gardener. Me personally, out here, it's mostly clay. So over the years, I've just added a bunch of horse manure and plant food, organic plant food. If you go to one of those retail discount outlet overstock stores, sometimes they'll have plant food in bulk, and it's good for many years. So you can just buy a whole bunch of it at once and then stick it in a cool, dry place where it's not going to run through extravagant heat cycles where it gets super hot and then super cold and then wrecks all the biology inside of it and stuff too. So just put that in a constant temperature environment. Maybe even a fridge if you got plenty of room for it, but most likely if you actually have normal food, you don't want to actually use plant food or allocate space in your fridge for the plant food, because that would probably be a little bit of a pain in the ass. So we're gonna have to go to break pretty quick here, but before we do go to break, I need to plug for a future show we have. We're gonna have a show. It's called Good Times Balls Deep. We're working out the details with the talent of the show. He's a really highly intelligent man. He's very insightful. He's basically self-educated. He didn't go through the government indoctrination camps. Everything he's learned from his own personal experience. Highly bright guy. He sees things from a very unique perspective. And quite frankly, one of the only reasons why I'm doing this show is to encourage him to do that show. Because, this show is just going to be filler for his show. If you like the ramblings and the dissertations of Tex Messages, then you're absolutely going to love and appreciate Good Times Balls Deep. Now, the air date of Good Times Balls Deep hasn't yet been determined, but it will be happening sometime in the future. I can almost guarantee you that, probably a 95% guarantee. Last thing I'd want to do is just come on here and make a bunch of bold-faced promises and not follow through with them. But ultimately, that show will be coming in the future. So in the meantime, we're going to have to step out for a little break, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes, it looks like. Welcome back to Tex Messages. I'm your host, Rick Tex. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing this broadcast into your auditory cortex, whether you're on a walk, in your home, in your car, at the park, maybe on a bike ride, maybe you're in an airplane or the space shuttle, maybe you're inside that Tesla Roadster that was in that rocket ship. Although, not really sure if we haven't yet decided whether we're going to transmit over terrestrial radio or not, or just stick with online platforms, the Daily Motion or YouTube, things of that nature. Currently, we're probably just going to stick with online platforms. To broadcast over radio, you need to send out a whole bunch of power, and some of those big stations that you see in the area, usually they stick them on the big hills, with the flashing red lights. Some of them transmit up to about a megawatt, which is a significant amount of power. If you see a kilowatt hour in your home, probably about 10 cents. So if you had a megawatt hour, you have to multiply that by 10 maybe 1,000. I don't remember, probably 1,000. So it gets to be a lot of money. What, $100 an hour or so? I mean, that's definitely more money than my current salary can handle. So more than likely, we'll just stick with the online platforms. The other thing about online platforms too, there's been a lot of rumblings about censorship. But with a lot of those, with YouTube and Daily Motion and things of that nature, and Google, what they have are these giant, humongous, colossal-sized warehouses that just run servers all day and night, just storing all of our information. The NSA might have some pretty big servers too. These things just save enormous amounts of information, and they take an enormous amount of power. So they're going to come to a time when they have to decide whether they're going to throttle back on all that information storage, or maybe the technology for storage, retrieval, and memory has been growing leaps and bounds. So that's certainly helped a lot as far as storing old videos from 10 years ago on some random server in a warehouse in the Palo Alto or California or Sacramento or wherever they have them nowadays. So ultimately, I think that might be used as an excuse to throttle back on videos, but we'll definitely see. Getting back on topic here, we're talking about gardening, because in the springtime, a lot of people in central Minnesota love to garden. And it's not so much conscious mindset. It's just that inherently deep inside of you, you know that it's the right thing to do and that it's something that you should do. Even though you can easily go to Cub Foods or Byerly's or Coburn's or Big Joe Rosso's groceries, you can the food that you get at those types of grocery stores, I would see them more as a safety net. If you're not able to grow your own food, see them as a safety net. For example, if you're at a carnival and somebody is hopping around on a unicycle and doing backflips on a tightrope, generally they have a safety net. They usually don't need it because they're ultra highly talented, skilled people with blessings beyond any of most of our wildest imaginations, which is what allows them to do what they do. And certainly they put a lot of practice into it and have more than earned all the praise and adulation that they receive. So when you grow your own food and provide it for yourself, not only are you getting all the necessary minerals that are extracted out of the soil and the vitamins that the fruit organically produces, or the vegetables organically produce themselves, you're also just getting you don't have to deal with all the synthetics and the pesticides and all those things that'll basically declare war on your gut microbiotics. That's probably the other thing too. Home gardeners, most of them prefer the organic method. They don't really get into the whole killing off their soil just so one plant can grow, because they don't want to pull weeds or anything. And if you do hate pulling weeds, which most people do, I mean, for me nowadays, I don't really mind doing it anymore, because there's 3 hens that live here, and they absolutely hate being outside if there's no guardian to protect them, because they're afraid of aerial predators. But if there is a guardian, even a scarecrow might even help. But if somebody's just outside and messing around, then the chickens are more apt to walk around and just enjoy themselves, scratch the ground, make funny noises, just have a good time. Then they become healthy hens, the eggs become healthy, and everybody's happy. That's another thing too. Chickens get the sort of a preconceived notion that chickens are quote-unquote farm animals. Basically what a farm animal is by definition is an animal that actually serves a function and a purpose. Whereas a cat or a dog, they're little, they're furry, they're cute, they make funny videos, they make funny noises, they're good with kids, they protect the environment and everything too. But you don't really have the same symbiotic relationship with a pet like that as you do with a chicken or a goat or a sheep or a cow or cattle, a turkey, anything that actually provides you with nourishment. Totally different relationship there, and you can still have all your emotional connections to farm animals too, and I think most farmers probably do. But of course, some of them you have to butcher if you want to survive too, so that people don't get too out of control with that type of thing. There's the maternal and the paternal instincts as far as raising animals too. Sometimes you have to know where to draw the line. But getting back to the gardening and weeds and things of that nature, you can buy these big giant, they're not really giant, they're rolls. You can find them in ours, they come in 4 by 50 foot rolls or something. You just roll them out. The water can seep through them, but the weeds can't come out of it. So you just roll them out, pluck a little circle in every 12 inches or so, and then put your cauliflower or your broccoli or eggplant or your hemp plants in there, and then let them grow and flourish, and you don't even have to deal with the weeds. You just water them all you want, and every once in a while there might be some rogue weed that tries to grow next to the plant too that you'd have to address and get rid of and eradicate, but for the most part it's way easier than just using a rear tine tiller and tearing up the ground and then just start putting random plants everywhere and then just letting the weeds flourish and just planting it all and hope your plants grow too. So that's definitely the strategy I'd recommend, just to use that weed barriers. Makes your life a lot easier, you save a lot of time. Yeah, most people are hardworking Americans contributing to society in a positive way, which usually involves some type of 9-to-5 work, or some people even more. So to allocate any amount of time to gardening, it's smart to be efficient about it. To know what you're doing and to be efficient, that's really the name of the game. So I mean, even if you do know what you're doing and you're efficient, you got a decent amount of land, it's still a challenge, because you might face a hailstorm or some rogue animal comes in and chews up all your leaves, like a rabbit or a kangaroo or a hippopotamus might trample all your plants, so then you're screwed for the year. You got to hustle up and try to plant some short term, like a radish that only takes a month to grow, or if you need to plant something in late July or August or whatever. So you can prepare for natural disaster. Just put up a fence for a rabbit, or put up a concrete barrier if you're worried about meteorites hitting it. But then you might also block the sun, so that's usually not a good strategy there. As long as you're getting sun, water, and there's no weeds to steal all the nutrients, and you're putting decent plant food in, you're probably going to be a resounding success at gardening. And not only that, when you go outside this is the main point I wanted to construct this morning, ladies and gentlemen, at home or at the park or on a walk. You mostly want to introduce your children and your family members to gardening, and just, if you're out working in the garden, just let them come out there. Make it a family affair. Everybody can have fun doing it. Just give them a clear objective. Pull a couple weeds here. Stick some plants in here. Go feed the chick. Dig up some worms for the chickens even. Just something cool like that to get them at one with nature, and most importantly, to get them at one with the dirt and the soil. Because thing with a human body is, your human body has microbiotics in it that communicate with the soil, So when you walk on the soil with bare feet, you've seen those diagrams before. They show you the bottom picture of a foot, and it shows different color pictures partitioned off. You know, this part is the liver, this part is the intestine, this part is the kidney, this part is the pancreas, this part is the brain, this part is the rectal cavity or something like that. That's because your nerve endings, your microbiotics use those nerve endings to communicate with the ground. It's sort of like a screening process. Your foot hits the ground and it knows all the microbiotic. I mean, obviously they don't talk English to each other or use communication that we do through sound waves or light waves or radio waves or anything like that. They have their own special ways of communicating with each other. So when your foot hits the ground and it understands right away all the microbiotics in the ground, whether it's healthy, whether it's dangerous, whether it's good for you, bad for you, malevolent, benevolent. It's a very complex system, and it's one that, as any basic scientist doesn't really understand. They might say they understand it, but they really, I mean, I sure as hell don't understand. I mean, I can barely read, so obviously I'm not going to be able to understand it. But it's more of a common sense type thing. If you allow common sense to enter your life, that's another thing too. Somebody tells you a lie enough, I mean, there are 4 lights. If somebody tells you a lie long enough and you believe it, you're giving up your common sense. The only way you can get back your common sense is to communicate with yourself, with your hands, with your feet, with your intestinal system, your appendix, your kidney. Everything works in tandem to communicate to you what you need. It's not, you know, Big Joe Rosso runs the nutrition plant and he says that you can eat apples a day and you're healthy. Well, that's great, but if you buy an apple that's full of suspicious chemicals and you don't clean it off and you eat that and you're diabetic and you're glucose intolerant and all this other stuff, it's going to be wildly unhealthy for you, and you know, you might even have some weird reaction and perish as a result of eating it too. So that's why it's more important to communicate with your own body than it is to just communicate with random people. Even me. You know, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about 70% of the time. But I'm just using common sense to try to communicate introspection and help you to know how to communicate with introspection. I mean, I know it's comfortable to talk to other people and tell them a definitive answer and say, okay, yeah, that must be the facts. I'll just follow that like it's gospel. Another thing too that we've been ingrained to believe is that if we can take memory from somebody or something, retrieve it, and then restate it, that shows that we're potentially successful people in society, which to some degree holds truth. I mean, it is good to be obedient and everything, but it's also very helpful to question. You don't need to just by default question or take the contradictory approach to everything. I mean, hell, I contradict myself all the time. So, I mean, you don't necessarily need to just by default contradict people and just act like a smartass all the time, because chances are pretty good you probably get your ass kicked at some point, and rightfully so. So just be cognizant, use common sense, communicate with yourself. You don't necessarily need to challenge others, but it is help. Be a nice person too. That definitely helps. If you're a nice person to other people, they're going to feel better about you, and then they're going to feel better about themselves, and then they're going to feel better about the job they're doing. Even somebody that's mowing lawn, for example, you know, just be nice to them. Then instead of running over all your flowers or knocking down your trees or something like that, they'll be like, well, you know, this guy or girl is pretty nice, so I'm not going to cut their flowers today. But if they're having a rough day, they're mad, they're angry, maybe someone flashed a gun at them while they're driving to their house, so they're on red alert and they're all in that weird mindset like the world is out to get them. But if they come to your house, you're a nice person to them, that's their most recent memory, so they'll figure, alright, this guy's pretty rad. He's a pretty bomb person, so I won't do anything silly or to get rid of that privilege too. So, yeah, sorry I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. But going back to gardening and weeding I think is where I left off. Yeah, it's important to get your children involved at an early age so that they know the importance, especially young developing digestive systems, because your gut microbiotics, it begins at a very young age. Even when you're breastfeeding, that's when it really truly begins, and that's when when human bodies do start growing the microbiotics, which just constantly regenerate and replenish and live into perpetuity. And more or less, some have even claimed that your microbiotics in your intestinal system is actually working symbiotically with the human host, which more or less means that you have the brain in your skull and you have your brain in your intestines. So there is multiple forms of intelligence within one human. You're not just one person. You're I suppose by definition you're one person, but you're not one living entity. You're multiple living entities living in harmony. So you work together as one. And of course you work with other humans too, so it's good to communicate with them and be a nice person and all that. And when you expose kids to gardening at an early age, they realize the importance of it. It might be something to live for, especially nowadays with all the video game. Even when back in the good old days when I was a young kid, that was when the original Nintendo first came out. So we had every reason to sit inside and just play Nintendo all day, or Micro Machines and Legos and things. But TV was starting to get big back then. Cable was still reasonably priced. So you had a lot of good incentive to just sit inside and watch TV and play Nintendo games all day. And I mean, who wanted to go outside? You'd get dirty, then you'd have to clean your hands and your feet off, and that was just a big hassle. But anyways, we're gonna have to go on another break here. But before we go on break, I want to make sure to plug for a future show we have. The show will be titled Good Times Balls Deep. We haven't yet worked out the details of the show, but it should be coming in the very near future, and it's going to be a great show. The host of the show, see, he's actually a host. He's been upgraded to host. I'm still a parasite of this show, but he is host status. He's a real smart guy. A lot of people respect him. He's very highly esteemed in any community he's come across. He's always just left a positive impact on people's lives. So to be able to just be a part of the future show, Good Times Balls Deep, is something that I'm honored to announce to the ladies and to you ladies and gentlemen viewing at home. And hopefully it'll come in the very near future, but again, we are still working out details, so please stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rick Tex. You're listening to Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show. I thank you all for bringing us into your auditory cortex, whether you're listening at home, maybe you're on a walk in the car, at the park, doing some skydiving, maybe you're at the dirt race track or something. Well, dirt race tracks actually don't open till mid-April or so. And we will delve into that topic. We will delve into dirt track racing. I mean, I am a certified, I don't really like to inject myself into the show, but I am a certified NASCAR American. So we will discuss NASCAR and dirt track racing at some point. But I've been talking to some of the show producers and of course the host of Good Times Balls Deep, and we're thinking about maybe at some point in the future introducing a show called Nights at the Round Table, which we've been fortunate enough to come into contact with very extraordinary people in our lives. You know, the people that have just dedicated their lives towards doing good things, not only good things to others, but to themselves, to their families, to their communities, to their countries, just all around winning. People that when you're around them, there's so much winning. Anytime I'm interacting with people on Facebook, feels like my gut is about to explode. There's just too much winning. And to be able to bring those types of people into this podcast would probably take it into a stratosphere. I mean, it still wouldn't absolve me from parasitic status, because I'll always be a parasite to the good people in my life, because I'm more times than not, I always take more from them, just because everything that they provide me as a person is infinitely more than I could even imagine that I could even provide anybody else. So that's why I'll probably always be a parasite. Which, you know, it's just that's just, there's a yin and a yang. That's just how this world operates. But getting back to the topic of discussion, I just want to run a quick compendium of this. This will be the final segment of the show. Generally, we only want to have an hour-long show, and usually I don't want to do any prep work for the show either. I feel that if I do prep work and just read off a piece of paper or a teleprompter, it's extremely unfair and disrespectful to the listening audience, because people don't want that crap anymore. They just want to, even if you got a moron that can barely read, doesn't really have much of an education, his career is basically in shambles, he has no hobbies, even somebody like me, just a real person that can come up here. I mean, the only reason why I do this show is because I'm not good at anything else in life. All I can do is sit in front of a camera and say stuff. You know, if I went to a family gathering or something, I probably wouldn't even be in the top 10 of the best speakers or the most intelligent people there. I mean, this is just mostly filler for Good Times Balls Deep. If I can encourage the skilled people behind Good Times and Balls Deep to provide everything that they can provide to you ladies and gentlemen viewing at home, then I've achieved my objective. And for this show, that's basically what I'm trying to provide. But going back, we need to provide the compendium of this show. The only thing I want to get across in this show is the importance of gardening at home. And if you live in some coffin apartment, you know, I used to know this girl. I think she was originated in somewhere else in the world, which was more highly congested than America. And you know, they live in an apartment, they got a south-facing window, they got all their little plants and their spices and everything growing on their deck. So just something as simple as that. I mean, yeah, you buy your rice and your lamb and your goat at the local Dirty Dick's meat or whatever, and then you bring that and then you use your homegrown spices to cook your foods. So rather than buying spices with probably a bunch of weird fillers in and everything too, you know that it's homegrown, it's organic, it's grown with love, it's grown with care. You can get your children involved, your neighbors involved, just this whole community involved. Some of those bigger communities too, they have these community gardens. Like when I picked up some rain barrels a long time ago, I went to downtown Minneapolis, and it's kind of funny because even though Minneapolis is a very highly congested metropolis, and you know, culture this, culture that, all that good fun stuff that makes it sound good on paper. Most people there do still have their agricultural roots and mindset and the roots of their ancestors and farming and just being good. That's not necessarily to say that people who live in the city are bad people. They are good, excellent, great, upstanding people that want to contribute to societies in their own unique way, the way that they choose. But some of them, when I got my rain bales, I went to downtown Murderapolis and I got it from this lot that, there's probably some dumpy crack house that they just took a wrecking ball or a bulldozer to and knocked it down, filled it in, and then they just made a garden out of it. It was quarter acre or something like that. They had their little greenhouse, they had their 250-gallon rain barrels everywhere, and they're just people having a great time. Big city nights, big city lights, people just going there with their little hats on and then their overabundance of sunscreen, which probably has some weird nanotechnology, gets into their skin and poisons them, but hey, it's their prerogative to wear the sunscreen, so who the hell is a big city or big country here to tell them what to do? So they had these rural gardens, just everyone was getting involved. Everyone in the neighborhood, during the weekend, they just go. One guy was plowing up the field. Some other gal was growing plants, and somebody else, they had all these plants in those little containers, and they were figuring out where to distribute them, or they were moving around plants so that they could be in the sun at this time of the day, or getting them out of the rain if it's going to rain or something like that. Just a lot of people there. Some of them weren't even doing a damn thing. They're just hanging out there talking. Drinking alcohol or something, just having a good time. That was a hangout spot. You didn't sit in someone's basement and turn on loud music and a strobe light and run into each other and try to kill each other. They just go to a garden and drink beer and have a great, that's what adults do in those types of communities, I guess. So, hey, that's excellent. I mean, that's a great way to get back in touch with the earth that we're living on. It is very important to work with the earth, because the earth works with our microbiome. It may not work with our neurological system. You can't just look at the earth and say, hey earth, how are you feeling today? You guys want me to urinate on the ground to provide you with some weird nutrients that you need? It's difficult to communicate through your neurologic, through your visual cortex, through your 5 senses. You can communicate with other humans and physical objects, but you can't communicate with the earth directly through that method. So it is a little, I suppose the methods that you communicate with the earth are a little obscure, and they're not always readily beneficial. You don't really measure your relationship with the earth in a materialistic way. I mean, I can't go up to somebody on the street and say, hey, I'm a good friend of the earth. But if I went up to somebody on the street and I said, hey, I have a Tesla Model S or something, they'd be like, oh man, this guy's pretty baller, man. He's big time, he's a cool guy. So I guess the important thing is, regardless of your living circumstance, I mean, I've gotten way over time here with this tangent, but irregardless of your living circumstances, I mean, if you live in a house, just find some south windows. Indoor plants are very healthy too. Air quality inside houses are almost always consistently worse than outside. And if you have indoor plants, that will improve your air quality. It'll provide more oxygen, and different plants do different stuff too. Aloe gets rid of the formaldehyde. An arachnoid plant gets rid of carbon monoxide or something. But if you do have natural gas, you should have a carbon monoxide detector. And if you do have any kind of carbon monoxide in your house, you want to get rid of it as soon as you can. So maybe that wasn't the best example to use, but different plants eradicate different. Now, maybe you can test the quality of your air too. I mean, I don't really know. I've never done it, but there are air purifiers and things of that nature. But then you just got these weird motors running all the time, and it's just, I don't know if it's the best thing you want to do. So just to have indoor plants is probably the way to go. Even if you got a garden outside, just get some indoor plants year round. I mean, the environment's going to be healthier, you're going to be healthier, your community's going to be healthier, your country's going to be healthier, your children are going to be healthier, your friends and family are going to be healthier. You're just going to be an all-around better person, a 360 win. And for gardening, so you start out with your seeds around this time of the year. You plant them inside, you put them in a window, they grow, then you transplant them outside. Now, when you transplant them, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes I'll grow a plant indoor all winter and it won't really grow, like carrots or radishes. I grew carrots and radishes all winter one time. And when I transplanted the carrots outside, they grew like weeds, like wildfire. But the radishes, they basically died within 2 days. So that is another factor to consider too. Always document what you're doing and what happens, so that in the future you know that maybe planting the radishes indoors and transplanting them outside wasn't a good idea, or growing the beets inside, transplanting them outside was the best idea since sliced bread. So just document, because your situation is going to be, no one person in the entire world will have the same process and will have the same variables involved with their own personal gardening. I mean, just being in a different part of the world, the sun is in a different location, the soil is different, the air quality is different, the water table level is different. There are obviously vast similarities, but the difference is there's no two even in your own garden. Maybe the northeast corner of the garden, it's elevated a little bit higher and the soil's a little bit different, the runoff is different, and then the other corner, the southwest corner, is just maybe it's sandy, or maybe some animal likes to crap there a lot, or maybe a meteorite hit there at some point, so it dispersed a bunch of weird rocks that have some super awesome properties that make your plants grow like wildfire. Who knows? So it's just good to document stuff at a reasonably detailed level. I mean, you don't need to get so out of control that you're keeping a stack of 10 notebooks just for one season of gardening. Be realistic about it too. It's important to find balance, to find the right documentation, the right amount of documentation, accurate documentation that's light enough to where you can refer back to it, and then you can use it in the future too. And you'll learn over time how to properly document what the hell you're doing. So because say your first year you'll slap together a bunch of writings and they don't really mean a whole lot, and then next year you'll look back on it and you'll think, oh, I didn't really learn a damn thing from that. Maybe I should change this, or just completely throw it out and redo it. So it is important that that's also, documentation is also an evolving process as well. There's no right or wrong way to do it, because we all learn a little bit differently. We all see the world a little bit differently. We all have different circumstances injected into our lives that make us do stuff in a unique fashion. So hell, maybe you shouldn't document at all. Maybe you think it's the dumbest idea ever. Then by all means don't. If you have an excellent memory, if you just think all gardening all the time and you don't give a damn about anything else in your life, then what's even the point of writing it down? You're probably thinking so fast and your brain is working so fast that you can't even write down all the ideas, because your brain is at Mach 4 and your hand is only Mach 0.1 or something along that. So that's another thing to consider too. I guess mostly just listen to yourself. Listen to your own microbiotics and try to figure out where that's driving you, and then make the ultimate determination upon that. But ultimately, gardening is very good. It's very good to be outside. Your melatonin, serotonin, that keeps that stuff in balance. And yeah, depression is caused by an imbalance of chemicals. But your actions cause that, to an extent, cause those imbalances too. And it is difficult to know what exactly you need to do or what needs to be done. But it is important to be introspective. So I mean, if you have a question about something, say for example, the last 3 years you've been writing down everything you're doing about gardening, and then there's something you can't quite figure out why this or why that isn't working out, you may be able to look at Google or Facebook or something and figure out the answer. But ultimately, you probably know the answer, you're just not seeing it. You're not recognizing the patterns, it's hiding in plain sight. Or maybe you just don't want to be successful. That's the biggest issue with NASCAR. Most of the drivers are afraid of winning. There's only about a handful of drivers that actually like winning. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski to an extent. I think Martin Truex just had a really good car, but he seems like he's probably afraid of winning. But other than them guys, some people are just afraid of being successful. And that you when you're gardening, you really, there's no reason to be fearful of that. I mean, yeah, you might have a whole assload of plants and then you got to do a bunch of weeding if you didn't put the proper weed barriers on, or it's overwhelming to think that you got to spend all this time gardening when you're already working 9 hours a day or 12 hours a day, and you got 3 kids to take care of, and you got to do some weekend part-time job to pay for some medical bills that you had when you got run over by a truck or something like that. So yeah, everyone's circumstances are unique, and whatever works for you, just take it and fill it up with fuel, fire up the engine, make sure all 12 cylinders are running, and put the pedal down. Alright, this is the conclusion of the show, but before I sign off, I want to make sure that you guys are aware that we will have a show in the near future called Good Times, Balls Deep, and not exactly sure yet when it's gonna air, but it should be very soon. And I can't even tell you how pumped I am for the show. I mean, it's just every night I don't go to sleep till 2 in the morning because my heart is just beating 100 miles an hour, just anticipating all the waiting that'll go on with the show. So needless to say, it should be a great show. I think you guys are gonna enjoy it. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully there's many shows to come in the future. Thank you very much.